question. What, realistically, can you do in the closing hours of a campaign? Well, in Democratic New York City, volunteers loaded onto buses headed for battleground Pennsylvania, as well as some competitive congressional districts, to knock doors in the home stretch. Just some of the 150,000 doors that were hit nationally just this past weekend by the grassroots organization Swing Left. I talked to some volunteers about what they want to accomplish.
It's exactly these face-to-face conversations talking about the issues that are important to them that can really make a difference. A lot of it is really just about talking to them about where their polling place is, reminding them about making a plan.
We have, experienced how effective peer-to-peer organizing is. So I think especially as a group of young people, we're headed to college campuses.
I think because of record Gen Z turnout, we're going to win the election.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump has honestly angered the wrong generation.
I want to do something like Michelle Obama said. It's just putting it all to work and making sure that whatever happens, I can walk away from it feeling like I did everything I could possibly do. I want my country back.
Where's the emotion coming from?
Just from years of feeling disheartened.
And joining us now, Yasmin Radjy, the executive director of Swing Left, and Jackie Payne, founder and executive director of Galvanize Action. It's great to have both of you here. Yasmin, you had at least 2,300 volunteers nationally this weekend. The Harris campaign put out some stats. They said they had 90,000 volunteers knock on more than 3 million doors. This is the first time some Democrats have told me they've ever heard of people knocking on the same doors a second time or a third time. How much can that final knock make a difference in the last 24, 48 hours?
Yeah, first of all, the energy, you saw it. It's infectious. My first political campaign was the 2008 Obama campaign. And when I say the energy now is even higher than that historic race, we felt it in Pennsylvania this weekend. We feel it all across the country. And this election, we all know this election is tied. And so those final door knocks, those final phone calls, those might be the difference in an election that's going to come down to just a few thousand votes.
How do you explain that, though? If you said the enthusiasm and the energy is just like 2008, 2008 wasn't a super close election in the end, and this is still super close. So how do you compare the two?
Our electorate has gotten more and more calcified. We all know just how much our country has changed since 2008. A lot of the states that are really, really competitive have gotten even tighter. And we also, I think, have been collectively traumatized by what it is to lose, right? And so one of my favorite groups of volunteers this past weekend, Chris may have met some of them, was 80 students from here in New York City at Columbia who went out to knock on doors in Pennsylvania, not for one day, but for 3 days. They are out still in Pennsylvania today. And what was amazing to me and that feels so different from 2008 is my first campaign, I was right out of college, too. All I cared about was the presidential. I cared about Barack Obama. They were out in the Lehigh Valley knocking on doors, not just for Kamala Harris, but also for Susan Wild for Congress. And when I was out there and trying to sort of explain this is so important, thank you for winning back the House, they said, of course it's important to win back the House. There's just a level of political sophistication that we see in activists today, in young people today, that we're just not going to lose again. And no one wants to regret, could I have done a little bit more to just get that final voter out in such a close election?
And Jackie, your group has been targeting moderate female voters specifically. You've been pushing for white women voters. And that voting bloc, they leaned into Trump. They voted for Trump 2 cycles in a row. So what are you seeing out there? Are there any signs that this year is going to be different? And Jackie, I don't think we can hear you. Just make sure you're not muted.
Well, we'll wait to see if she... we've all been there. Yes. We've all been there on the Zoom call. But let me ask you something, Yasmin, because you said you were with them in Pennsylvania. So what do they say? What do you tell them to say? What's going to convince somebody who wasn't so sure whether or not they were going to go out and vote?
Question.
What are they going to? What are you going to say to them at this point that they haven't heard?
I mean, I think the top feedback we get from canvassers and phone bankers in terms of surprise is they're like, I keep reading about these undecided voters. is this actually going to really help? A couple things happen in every canvass. Number one is there's voters who know who they're going to vote, and they've got questions. They don't know where they need to go. A lot of our folks were like, they don't have transportation. Can we send them the hotline number? They don't know that their polling place has changed. So that little bit of information, just making sure they've got a plan to vote is important. But a lot of people still don't know who they're going to vote for. And so one of my favorite stories from this past weekend was a phone banker who talked to someone who had an illegal abortion in 1970. And abortion is her top issue. That's unequivocal for her. She didn't know just how stark a difference there is between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and certainly didn't know who her congressional candidate might be and just how far apart Democrats and Republicans were. So on that call, they convinced that person to get out and vote and convinced them to vote Democrat up and down the ticket.
And to also talk to their friends. Jackie, right. I think we've got you back now. I'm sorry about that was muted, but I was asking you, I think you heard my question. What about the white women who helped Trump win in 2 cycles?
Yeah, so we do have some encouraging news.
In 2016.
So we do work with empowering moderate white women to get them to actively engage, protect our democracy, and advance the issues they care about. We are seeing movement. We've been tracking the same group of over 6,000 moderate white women since May. And what we're seeing over time is that they are trending slightly towards Harris. They were 41-41 for Biden-Trump. They're now 46-44 for Harris. And the issues that matter most to them are economy, preserving democracy, border security, and reproductive freedom. And they're really going into this election trying to determine who is going to deliver for their families on all 4 of those issues. And right now, they're trending slightly towards Harris.
Jackie Payne, Yasmin Radjy, thanks to both of you. And up next, how early voting numbers in Nevada have now set off a Democratic scramble.